a warm welcome to the 9th episode of the podcast of the World Wind Energy Association, the World of Wind Power. My name is Stefan Gsänger, and it's my pleasure to talk today, the first time in this podcast series, about a European country, about Austria. Austria, this Eastern Central European country, which has played a very important role in the development of modern wind power, as we will soon hear. And it's my pleasure to welcome here as our guest, with whom I will speak about the development and the current situation in the Austrian wind power, Mr. Martin Jaksch-Fliegenschnee. Martin, warm welcome.
Warmly welcome from Austria, from Vienna, the heart of Austria. Yes, from the Wind Energy Association.
Yes, Martin, you personally, you are the spokesman of the Austrian Wind Energy Association, and you just had the Austrian Wind Energy Symposium last week. So we can speak also about what's currently going on. But before we start, maybe you can briefly introduce yourself, because I know you now for many, many years, decades, working for wind power. What did make you work for wind energy, for renewable energy?
Yeah, I studied ecology with the idea to work later then in climate action network. And I started then to work at the Wind Energy Association in Austria in 2002. So there are many years I worked in the association, first in the part for the education for children. We designed a program in the primary school where we talked and played with the children about wind energy, and then later about all renewables. And by the time I changed my work in the association, and now I'm press speaker for more than 15 years.
So you have a long history in that. Already speaking about that, you also do work for schools, for example, shows us that you have an holistic approach to that. So you're not just focusing on the wind turbine itself. What is the role of the association, the Austrian Wind Energy Association? How old is it, and what's the role that it plays in Austria?
Yeah, the organization itself, it's 31 year old. So we had our anniversary last year. And this year we have the 30th anniversary for the first erected wind turbine that are in the grid. So our first wind turbine in Austria that was connected to the grid was erected in 1994. A small turbine, at this time a big one. It was a 150 kilowatt Nordex wind turbine. At this time, one of the biggest one. Now, of course, not so big, but this was a really, really tough start in Austria, because at this time, normally the turbines had a capacity of 30 kilowatts. So this was a very good start in Austria.
Okay, so 30 years, but that is very exciting. When we look at, as we found out last year, that Austria was actually the first country at this point of time that we know where a windmill, more or less a traditional windmill, was used to power wind, or to power a generator or produce electricity from wind energy. That was in 1883 at the International Electrical Exhibition in Vienna. So you found it out, and how was your reaction? You didn't know about that either. I think almost no one worldwide. How was the reaction in Austria when that came out, that Austria was actually the very first country?
Yeah, it was a very surprise, because we discussed about windmills that stand in the middle of Vienna and other parts of Austria for really mills, not wind turbines for electricity. And this was a very surprised that this turbine in 1883 at the exhibition stands in the middle of Vienna and produce electricity not only instead for using the electricity, also for deposit in a battery. So we had the discussion that we have now how to get the Energiewende on the ground. We had this also in 1883 in Vienna. So this was a very surprise at this early stage.
Which is then more than 100. Actually, that is a nice number. Then 111 years before the first modern wind turbine was connected to the grid.
Yes.
I know that you did some research then also what happened between 1883 and 1994. There were some additional windmills installed. What have you found? What have you found out in the meantime? What happened in that gap in the 111 years?
Yeah, there was installed some windmills of this type, but they vanished. And interesting in the like 40 years ago, there were also some windmills erected, but not the grid connected. There are also electricity windmills which connected then to also to a battery. But this was also some small turbines and only a few, and they didn't get the breakthrough to change the system. It was not like the situation in Denmark, where then when they start it get a rush and many turbines were erratic, were only erratic, so one there and they vanished again. So
Were these
first nice light for the wind energy, but this was not a big start, so to say.
These were Austrian products as well, because that first windmill in 1883 was by a Austrian engineer, and those other turbines that you mentioned, they were also made in Austria?
The first one in the 19th century, there was more or less the same design. And the other ones was more or less they are handmade.
That's how many of these windmills started, and you look around in the world, including the windmill, which is in operation still now since almost 50 years in Denmark with a 2 megawatt size. So let's look at the situation now in Austria. Now wind energy is playing a major role. It's not anymore some small windmills just somewhere in the mountains. So what is the status today? How many windmills have you up and installed and connected to the grid?
At the moment, we have around 1,400 turbines online with a capacity of 3,900 megawatts. And we produce with these wind turbines around 12% of the electricity we have in Austria. So by that, wind energy is the second best technology. In Austria, the hydropower has a big history. We have nearly 50% of the electricity production from hydropower. So for that, it will need a little bit time. By then, the wind energy will overflow the hydropower, but this time will come. We have a very big potential, and we will see this in the next 20 years.
So currently, you said it's almost 4 gigawatt, and that's 12%, which is around 1/4 of what the hydropower at the moment are providing. So when we look at the landscape in and you had that obviously last week, those people meeting, who are the important players? Who are the investors? What type of companies are involved nowadays in the market?
The wind energy history has started more or less like in Germany. The community power was the start of wind energy. So the first windmills that was installed in Austria were owned by people, were these were installed by people. So the classical state-owned electricity producer, they didn't think that they wind energy could play any role in the electricity production. And there's a nice story when one of the first windmills that was erected in Austria, the state-owned electricity producer came. They had to control the production and the meter, and they changed the meter of the wind energy, the wind turbine, more than 3 times because they didn't. They were so surprised that the wind turbine produced that much electricity. So meanwhile, the situation has changed. Also, the state-owned companies produce wind energy and are meanwhile one of the biggest wind energy producers. But the people-owned companies are still the majority in the wind energy production in Austria.
Okay, so community power, like in, let's say, Denmark, which I think was the first country with that model, and then also in Germany, that is a neighbor country, played a key role in developing this modern wind power, but still plays a role today.
Yes, and I think it is necessary to stick on this model because if we have to speed up in the production of wind energy, we need these companies most to get more speed in the development.
Well, that's what we know from many parts of the world, that people, I mean, there's some speak about opposition, but when you have local companies or farmers who do it on their own land, then usually there is no opposition, or maybe just very few people say, I don't like that. But if the farmer says, I want it on my land, it's usually happening. Is that same in Austria?
Yes, it's clear. If it's a company, we have the community companies. They are the biggest workforce. The companies with the most people they work there in this region. And if you have such a important company of the region, and this company is the company who build up the windmills, and it's much easier than this a company that comes from out of Austria, or it's also too far from another federal state. So then it's easier to get the project on the ground without any discussion.
Now, let's look also at the side of the manufacturing, the equipment. Austria doesn't have a manufacturer. Maybe you can share also who have the biggest market shares in Austria. I saw the well-known brands sponsoring the symposium. So, but what I know is that you also have actually many companies which are part of the supply chain. How is the manufacturing side in Austria represented?
So the manufacturing side, we had a producer 30 years ago. So there is a wind park between Israel and Jordania. So at the Golan Höhen, there the wind turbines are still in work. But at this time, the company decides to get out again of the wind energy production, sadly. And so Austria now has no turbine manufacturer. It has one company that designs windmills and licenses these designs to other companies. So there are many windmills that are designed in Austria, but not there's no developer, so to say. Then
you have other supply chain
we have
no?
Yes, Austria is a nation of a supply chain, also in other industry parts. In Austria, we have 180 companies of the supply chain, and we say there's nearly no part of a windmill that is also produced in Austria, but then produced for the supply chain worldwide. So we have a big automotive company, so that in every third turbine that is erected is a software of this company. We have a company that produce the layers of the bricks of wind turbines. Every second wind turbine has a brick of this company. So they're very important companies for the wind wind branch, but no company that produce a whole wind turbine.
How many jobs can you specify? 180 companies. That's quite a lot, no? Aside from
we have in Austria like 6,000 jobs in the wind industry. At a whole, the jobs in the supply chain and also in the producing of electricity.
Okay, so that is a quite substantial number, considering also the size of the population, and Austria is not one of the big European countries.
Yes.
Now, of course, I mean, you also were able to get some really specific knowledge. I remember that the Tauern wind farm, which was at that time the highest altitude wind farm in the world, because of the topography of the Austrian mountains, because I think half of Austria is in the mountains. Has that helped also to develop special technology? Of course, we know now there are wind farms, let's say Himalayan in China or in Andean mountains, which are even higher, but that know-how probably has helped as well, has it?
Yeah, sure. We have to adapt the turbines. So if you install the turbine in the Alps, in mountainous region, you need a de-icing system. And there are many companies that are involved in this topic. It's also that the turbines has to deal with more turbulences if they are in the mountains region. You have to get the parts of the turbine up the mountain. So there are some specific cars that can lift the plates so that the roads up to the wind park has not to made very big, so that you can also very narrow angles go with these cars and with the plates that can lift up for 60 degrees. So for this high expertise. Of course, well, otherwise you can't build up the turbines in the mountains.
I remember even when at one wind farm they tried helicopters versus trucks. It was one of your colleagues who explained that how they learned what is the better way, and obviously
Yes.
the helicopters in the high altitude is not very good because of the low kind of pressure at that altitude.
Yeah, so the
we
first
all
time
knew.
the first wind park that was also the Tauern wind park in Oberzeiring, which is now still the biggest wind park in mountainous region in Europe. They start to lift up the plates, and there are two problems. First, the problem with the air, that they get too thin to get up with these heavy lifts, and the other part was because of the plates. The wind catches the plates, and the first plate they try to lift up with the helicopter, they have to let go. So otherwise the helicopter went down with the plate. So they learned it's better to go by truck, and so they tried to change the trucks to get the parts on the wind park.
So that's already referring to the topographic diversity of Austria is quite big. You
Yes.
have a rather flat area around the Danube, and you have amongst the highest mountains of Europe. Looking at the geographic also distribution of wind energy, you have some parts of Austria where there's more wind and others are where there's less wind. Can you describe how that situation is?
Yeah, so we have the best wind situation, except wind situation in some alpinous regions, is in the east of Austria. And this is because of the also topographical situation, because in the east of Austria, the Alps ends. So we have the far end of the Alps, and on the other hand, the Carpaths on the other side starts. So we have a more or less like a small part where the wind gets much faster than it was before, because they have to squeeze through this small passage. And there you have a very fast wind from the west. And on the other hand, on the far east from Austria, the Hungarian flat area, there you have a second wind system, so that comes from the south. And in this small part in Austria, on the east side, you can use the fastened wind parts from the west because it was squeezed between the Carpaths and the Alps, and also the wind system from the south of the continent. So you have in this small part a very, very good wind situation that is more or less like a wind situation on the North Sea.
Very interesting. I heard from similar geographical, even like in China also, that where there's mountains, not really you wouldn't see them, but in dozens of kilometers maybe distance. So that really helps. So this part of Austria has a lot of wind, and there's still some places where you believe there should be more wind. There is a big potential not yet used.
Yes. So although we have the most wind turbines at the moment in this region, this is not because of the wind situation, because we had the second biggest potential of wind energy is in Styria, and they're only in the mountainous region. So in Styria, you can use wind energy only in the Alps, because in the flatter parts, there is no wind. But there, the potential is very big. And there are the best wind park in Austria is also a wind park that is installed in the Alps. So we have the mountain situation that is very good to use for wind energy. The reason why in Styria the wind energy is not that far developed than in Lower Austria is only a political decision. And therefore, if we go to the west of Austria, there we have two federal states where is no wind turbine erected, because the politician has decided for the last decades only to use the hydropower. This decision starts to turn, and now they discuss also about the wind energy. They always said, okay, we can't use wind energy because we have the Alps, and this is not possible to bring the turbines on the mountains. Although we had at the moment 130 turbines, all still now erected in Styria, and the highest wind park is on 1,900 meters. So this is no argument against wind energy. The big problems we had in Austria are political problems when wind energy is not developed. And so we had the situation now that the main production of wind energy is mainly in the east, and the farther you go to west, the lesser wind energy use there is.
So that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. That's what keeps wind energy back. Of course, now with 12%, that's above the global average. Global average at the moment is 10% of the power coming from wind. But of course, it's far beyond what other countries in Europe are doing, and some parts of the world. And you've already mentioned that there is a big potential which can be covered. Of course, we know politics are complicated, and you already referred to that there are states in Austria which have their own policies. There's the national level, which plays an important role. And not to forget, in Europe, it's always the European Union, which also plays an important role in what national governments can do. And maybe not to forget the local level, because local governments also need to support. So what do you see today are the main barriers for wind power to develop faster in Austria, or against the faster development?
So to develop wind energy in Austria, you need 3 political levels. You need, or 4 if you take the level of the European Commission or the European Union also in account, which we are very happy that we have this, because the pressure from European level is big, so that some political levels beneath have to act. But we have the national level, and then we have the level of the federal state, and then the local level, of course. And at the moment, we have the biggest problems in the federal states. So although we had the energy crisis the last 2.5 years, the politicians at the federal level are not in that action they should be. And for the development of wind energy, the federal level is the important one, because for the licensing of wind turbines, this level is in place, but also for the nature and also for the decision where turbines could be placed. So the 3 main parts for the development of wind energy is focused is the competence of the federal level. So this is at the moment the biggest problem in Austria, to bring this level into action.
Mm-hmm. So what are the main concrete problems? Is it you already referred to the permitting, which is a problem? Then I know that Austria had many years a discussion with the European Commission about which remuneration system, so how the electricity is paid. How are they related, and what is the concrete, if you now want to invest in Austria in a wind farm, what is the main problem that the investor is facing?
Yes. So the problem of permitting, it's like in other states in Europe, we have long time for permitting, and the permitting process was strengthened year by year. So at the moment, the situation is that you need 5 to 8 years to get a project on the ground, from the idea to the first kilowatt hour that is produced. And this is too long. This is too long. If you look at the climate crisis, it's too long. If you look at the energy crisis, so we had to speed up in this part. And this discussion is very intensive also of European level. The problem is that the changes had to be set in the federal level. So also if the Commission says, okay, at European level, you have to change something, how it is changed, it has to be done at federal level, and therefore it's actually one of the biggest problems. The other thing is for the zoning. We discuss many times where should we place the wind parks. There is now with the RED3 the discussion of acceleration zones. And we have in Austria some federal states, we have exactly no zone at the moment. So there's no zoning. So we have to push here also to get enough place for the installation of wind turbines. So with the same discussion like in Germany we had the last years. In Germany there were some legal changes to fasten it up. In Austria, we haven't reached this situation, so we have to do our homeworks still. A third point is that there has to be more persons in the permitting, so that when the projects come to the permitting, that there are enough people in place to work this up. So we had this some years ago that the project has to wait to get the process through because there were so many projects in the line. And if you look at the feed-in system, we had a tender system, like it is the system that the Commission wants.
We talk about European Commission now, no? So the
yes, European
remuneration
system, yes, because actually we had for 20 years a feed-in tariff. This has to be changed because of the situation that feed-in systems are not allowed anymore in Europe. And this change to...
At least that is what the European Commission says. Huh? So it's not really yet gone through the kind of courts, but that's what most politicians unfortunately do accept.
Yes. And this change from the feed-in system to the auctions, that was not very smooth. Like everywhere the changes are, you see that this is not easy because tender system or the auction system is very complicated, and you have to if you change one part, you have to change 7 other parts also that the system works again. Now, after 2.5 years, I think the auction system is in place so that it can work. But because of this long distance from feed-in system to auction system, we had more than 1,000 days without any system. And if you have such breaks in the support, then you see also the breaks then in the installation situation. So we had in 2020 a situation where more installations, more turbines were decommissioned than installed. So we had a negative wind turbine numbers development. And we have also this year a breakdown in the installation numbers, so that only 13 turbines can be erected. We hope that the next years, at least the next 3 years, we will get at least near the installation numbers that we need. But if the federal states don't come in action, we will see then again a very steep fall in the installations again. So in Austria, we had actually not very many years a stable system. We have many ups and downs, and it looks like that we still go this way to not to stabilize, but to make some years it possible and then have to wait again.
So the short-term prospects are not super bright. Now, one question, what role does the so-called energy sharing play on the wind power market in Austria? Energy sharing, let's briefly explain, means that, for example, members of an energy cooperative can get the electricity that is produced by this cooperative without or with very little taxes and levies. That's been different from other countries like Germany, being transferred into Austrian law. I hear from some people it works well, but does that have an impact on the wind power market?
Actually, there is a big discussion and big action in this part, but the problem is that the wind energy can actually not really take part in these systems. It's more or less a discussion for PV, and it's also, and the wind energy producers discuss how to get the wind energy in the system, but you have to create a company in between that you can get in these energy systems the wind energy in. because it's not allowed if you get the wind energy in a certain grid level to take part in these energy companies.
Okay.
So the wind energy is actually not part of this renewable energy communities, how it's called.
So, but I hear that there's discussion, so that could be interesting. We will follow on that side. I hear there are challenges in Austria. In general, situation is not bad, but it could be better. Now, time is running as usual, so we need to come to the conclusion. Now, after you've been working more than 2 decades for wind energy, and you know that there are problems, they can be overcome, they will be overcome after some time. What do you see as the long-term prospects, and when do you see Austria will reach that point of coming to 100% renewable energy in the power sector and maybe overall? Can you make an assessment in both
So
areas?
the 100% in the power sector, it's very clear. We're at a national goal for 100% renewable electricity in 2030. So we are near this goal. We have in Austria 78% of the electricity renewable, and we will reach this goal in 2030. But the potential is much, much bigger. If you only look at the wind energy potential, we have in Austria a wind energy potential for 126 terawatt hours wind energy production. And if you compare this with the electricity use in Austria, we have at the moment 70 terawatt hour electricity use. So it's more or less the double of the electricity use that we have in Austria can produce by wind energy. Then this would be, if you use the same sorts, like in Germany, it would be around 3% of the land of Austria where wind parks have to build up to get the 126 terawatt hours of wind energy. So the potential is big, and then you have the PV and the hydropower and the biomass also. So for Austria, it would be actually really easy to get 100% renewables, not only in electricity, but also in the whole energy part. But the problem is to come into action and to get the turbines and the PV on the ground to produce this energy that we need.
Well, thank you very much, Martin. I think that was a very good conclusion, which brings us to the end of this podcast. So Austria has everything it can. It needs to achieve 100% renewables. This is the message, but there still needs to be some work to be done. People are interested in becoming active in Austria. I'm sure there are also interested organizations, companies who will welcome you. With this, thank you very much for today. That was very insightful. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you also for the invitation.
And with this, I would also say thank you to our audience for listening. We hope that it's also interesting for you. With this, thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.